What do you get when silence finally cracks after all those years? When loyalty turns to heartbreak, and the people who kept the family intact begin to walk away? Janelle and Meri's emotional confrontation with Robyn and Cody all shakes out differently. If you've ever felt unappreciated and overlooked, you'll be able to relate. You won't believe how it all goes down. Watch now and see the moment things fall apart. Have you ever seen something come apart? Not all at once, but piece by piece, over time, until one day it just shatters? It's like seeing a family picture bleach in the sunlight. The smiles are still present, but the love that lies behind them is gone long ago. That's what it's been like observing the Brown family on Sister Wives, a slow disintegration that's been occurring right before our eyes. And now, the cracks aren't merely revealing themselves. They're splintering everything asunder. For years, we watched them sit around communal dinner tables. We heard discourse of unity, of sisterhood, of love that could be spread far enough to encompass all. And perhaps, for a while, we thought so. Perhaps they did as well. But what do you do when the promise of unity becomes a disguise? When people's silence is louder than anything they ever said? It didn't fall apart all at the same time. No, the Brown family's collapse came the way most real-life heartbreak does. One favor not returned, one sigh, one tear suppressed too long, one missed conversation at a time. But eventually comes a moment when the dam bursts. And for Janelle and Meri, that moment arrived with a truth that couldn't be suppressed any longer. Have you ever been doing all you can to keep something alive, only to discover that it was already dead? That was the place these women were in. After decades of constructing a life, 2 women, 1 husband, 1 home, 1 dream, they realized something devastating. They weren't family anymore. They were only clinging to memory for one. And at the center of it all, Cody, silent, hesitant, conflicted. And Robyn, the wife who once was considered a breath of fresh air, now more alone than ever. Favors began as subtle, and then it grew into something more, something hurtful. Emotional ties wore thin, trust eroded. But this is not merely a story of a confrontation. It's about years of silently endured pain coming to the forefront. It's about fierce women rising up after being set aside for far too many years and saying, enough. It's about the kind of heartache that doesn't involve screaming or banging doors, but with tears behind doors and a soft, steady voice whispering, what about me? If you have ever felt forgotten, taken for granted, or overlooked, you will know what this feels like. If you have ever kept quiet for peace's sake, even if it took a cost of pieces of yourself, you will recognize yourself in this moment, because this is not a reality show. It's the reality of how messy love and loyalty get. As Janelle and Meri speak up, you can sense the weight shedding, not because it's easy, but because it's needed. And as Robyn grapples with what ifs, and Cody holds on to a family that no longer has pieces that fit, we begin to understand what true courage looks like. Sometimes it's not in grasping, it's in releasing. What does it mean to truly take your life back? To stop asking for permission to be heard? To choose peace over pretending? That's the heart of what we're diving into today. Because this moment, this emotional reckoning within the Brown family isn't purely for drama's sake. It's about healing, about women finding themselves again, about the ending of something that never did quite function as it was intended to, and the starting of something much more true. So, if you've been watching Sister Wives for years, or even if you're just someone who knows how messy families are, this is one narrative you won't be able to avoid. Hang with me, because what's coming next will make you see this family, and perhaps even yourself, differently. Let's get started. The Brown family cracks have been long in the making, but now, in one unforgettable scene, it all just goes terribly wrong. You can literally feel the tension build with every episode, like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. On the surface, you witness smiles and perfect family table scenes. But below the surface, a tempest has been brewing since years ago, and now it's finally spilling out. This is not about a couple of arguments anymore. It's about deep emotional scars, manipulation that's been quietly occurring, years of silent betrayal, and the downfall of relationships that were supposed to stand the test of time. At the center of it all is Cody Brown, who's always been the center of the family's mayhem. But this time, the change is taking place. The wives are no longer holding their tongues. They're talking clearly, directly, and with naked honesty. Robyn, long regarded as the favorite, is finally going to be held accountable. And she's not alone. Janelle and Meri are coming forward as well, facing the harsh realities they've long kept secret. This isn't just a family fighting to hold on anymore. It's a house of cards about to come tumbling down. Secrets are being exposed, emotions are being stripped away, and the emotional damage? More than anyone anticipated. So buckle up, because what's coming next is the moment everything shifts. A no one saw it coming showdown is about to go down. And the emotional fallout will leave everyone, both on and off screen, totally shell-shocked. But first, welcome to TLC Reality Talk. I'm Indira, and today we're taking a hard, emotional glance at the confrontation that could forever change the Brown family. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that button. You won't want to miss what's next. And I'd love to hear your thoughts along the way, so be sure to leave them in the comments. For years, TLC cameras have followed the Browns, giving us a front row seat to their complex family life. We've seen the connections, the clashes, and everything in between. But what many viewers might not have fully realized until now is just how much control Cody has wielded and how Robyn's quiet influence has reshaped everything. This is not merely about love and jealousy. This is about control, emotional manipulation, gentle power struggles, and the gradual destruction of trust that's been eating away at the core of this family. Let's begin with Robyn. From the start, it was apparent she had a special kind of control over Cody. Yes, she was the sweet, supportive, loving wife, always kind, always empathetic. But observe more closely, and there's a harder edge behind that sweet smile. One that subtly, but strongly, remodeled the entire family structure. Robyn spent years cultivating an image, the one who's always struggling, who always needs help, the one who needs Cody above all else. His attention, his protection, his ongoing validation. And by always portraying herself as that one, she's maintained herself squarely at the emotional center of the family. And Cody? He's followed right along with her. Voluntarily. The two of them together have built a tenuous little universe that centers all around Robyn's requirements, while the requirements of others, particularly Meri and Janelle, appear to be disregarded. But here's the thing. Robyn's manipulation isn't so much what she says. It's also what she leaves unsaid. She doesn't have to scream or create drama. She's been able to keep Cody firmly in her circle just by always seeming vulnerable, always needing his help. She's built herself up to be indispensable in Cody's eyes, like he just couldn't get along without her. And when the family cracks began to show, Robyn's position became more apparent. She was no longer merely the victim. She was quietly driving the narrative. Over and over, Robyn would guilt Cody about what the other wives were experiencing. Perhaps it was a whispered discussion on how isolated she felt, or veiled suggestions that no one truly got her like Cody did. Gradually, those emotional pushes kept him nearby and pushed everybody else away. Meanwhile, Meri and Janelle, they were left to struggle, emotionally isolated as Cody was entangled in Robyn's deliberately manufactured distress. And now we get to discuss Cody himself, because although Robyn might have been pulling the strings, Cody's own part in this is scarcely innocent. In a sense, he's the puppet master of the entire scenario. Not because he's actively plotting, but because he simply refuses to act. Cody allows Robyn to control his feelings, allows her to set the timing of their relationship, and then disregards the consequences of it on his other wives. For a man who once professed himself to be dedicated to fairness and equality among his wives, his behavior has painted an entirely different picture. Time and time again, he's been unable to stand up to Robyn's emotional manipulation. Rather, he plays along, fueling the drama, widening the divide, and ignoring the women who've been with him the longest. And no one's felt that more acutely than Meri and Janelle. Cody has established such a strong emotional chasm within the family. No wonder the anger finally boiled over. Consider, for example, that memorable moment when he totally admits to withdrawing from Janelle. There's this charged scene, crisp and uncomfortable to watch, where Janelle, obviously tired of the unequal affection within their marriage, has to declare that she's not given the same treatment and consideration as Robyn. And what did Cody do in response? He shrugged. No effort to account for, no effort to repair, just dismissal. This sort of emotional abandonment didn't occur overnight. It's been a slow process, growing over the years. and it's made Janelle and Meri feel invisible, overlooked, and emotionally hungry. Meri, particularly, has been wearing her heart on her sleeve all along. From the catfish incident to her constant fight just to feel noticed by Cody, her suffering has been impossible to avoid. Her isolation is suffocating, nearly heart-wrenching to witness. And yet, while she's in pain, Robyn still relishes Cody's perpetual attention and encouragement. Every time Cody puts Robyn's needs ahead of all the others, it widens the gap. And that cyclical pattern, it's driven Meri and Janelle further into anger, resentment, and a deep sense of betrayal. Let's discuss what's going on behind those walls, because it's not neglect anymore. It's that Meri and Janelle no longer feel like they matter. Not as wives, but as human beings. Each time Cody sides with Robyn, it puts another wedge in between them. It's like a slow-motion train crash. You can see it coming, you know the destruction is inevitable, but nothing can be done to prevent it. It's not so much about being second or third at this point anymore. It's about being totally removed from the equation. It was once founded on the principles of equality and unity. But now, Janelle and Meri are beginning to see that those concepts might only have ever existed in words. The emotional climate Cody and Robyn have established isn't unhealthy. It's toxic. And you can sense it. It's only a matter of time before it all comes crashing down. And we're not even at the worst of it yet. As we descend further into this emotional unraveling, remember, we're only getting started. The changing allegiances, the quiet talk behind closed doors, the wounds to the emotions, there's much more to follow. And what you'll witness next is going to make it that much more difficult to turn away. Because sooner or later, the truth always surfaces, even when you bury it. And what about Robyn? That reality was revealed in a moment that stunned the whole family. For years, Robyn acted as the dutiful wife, the one who gave up, the one who attempted to keep peace. She portrayed herself as the emotional glue attempting to hold everything together. But behind the camera, when no one was supposed to know, the tale was quite different. That was when a hush-hush audio tape emerged, one that showed Robyn's true sentiments regarding the other wives. And in that intimate moment, everything changed. Robyn finally showed her true colors, and let's just say, it wasn't a pretty picture. Her language was brutal, plain-spoken, practically cruel. In a leaked audio recording, Robyn vented obvious frustration and even contempt for her sister wives, especially Meri and Janelle. For years, she had acted like the soft peacemaker, the one who always sought to keep the family together. But behind closed doors, she painted a very different picture. Can you picture how it must have felt for Meri and Janelle when they heard that programming for Janelle was just about unbearable? She had worked so long to create a sense of cohesion in the family, even as she was emotionally distancing herself from Cody. But hearing Robyn speak of her with such disdain, like she was a burden and not an equal, it shattered something within her. That was when she understood. She hadn't just been disregarded all along. She'd been disempowered by a person she felt she could rely on. And the agony was written across her face. And then there's Meri, already struggling with years of feeling replaced by Cody, the catfishing fiasco, and fighting to just remain relevant in her own marriage. This bombshell was like a gut punch. Robyn, who had smiled in her face, sat at her table, and shared holidays with her, was revealed to be someone who had clandestinely spoken against her. To Meri, it was betrayal. Yes, but it was also heartbreak. She had sacrificed so much to the family, given so much. And yet, here was Robyn, outwardly maintaining the image of perfect sister wife while inwardly criticizing Meri for issues in the family. And Cody? His response only made matters worse. Rather than face the actual pain and turmoil Robyn's words had created, Cody opted to turn a blind eye. He would not face her. He would not even accept what the recording had opened his eyes to. Instead, he held fast to his previous narrative, that all was well, that the family simply needed to get along, and that there was no need to rock the boat. But by this point, the truth was too huge to deny. That mirage of harmony, it was busted. In what follows, you can observe Cody making every effort to sidestep conflict. He won't own up to Robyn. He won't acknowledge what Meri and Janelle are experiencing. He just insists on peace, even if it comes at the cost of ignoring the actual emotional scars right before his eyes. At times, Janelle reaches her breaking point, And it's not so much Robyn, it's Cody. She's drained, weary of the cold shoulder, weary of the favoritism, weary of being ignored. Her anger isn't so much about being wounded, it's about the fact that Cody is enabling this poisonous dynamic to go on. But rather than man up, Cody continues to shield Robyn. And the fissures between him and his wives widen further. What makes this moment so unforgettable isn't even what Robyn said. It's what Cody didn't do. His inaction, his failure to speak up and remedy the harm, made it painfully clear where his true allegiance lay. And for Meri and Janelle, that silence spoke volumes. This was the pivot point, the moment the walls finally fell. After this, the family couldn't pretend again. Trust had been shattered, perhaps forever. And the intimate emotional cracks that had been building up all these years, now all was laid bare for the world to see. And as we witnessed these moments, at this point it became painfully clear. The unraveling had truly begun. Cody, Robyn, and the rest of the family were standing on the edge of a collapse they could no longer stop. The truth had finally come out. And the worst part? It was only just beginning. Then came the moment we'd all been waiting for. After all the years of gathering resentment, emotional distance, and hundreds of passive-aggressive comments, Janelle and Meri finally had had enough. No more sugarcoating, no more niceties. It was time to bring Robyn to account, personally. And when they did, the tension in the air was palpable. You could have sworn you felt the energy in the room, the pent-up emotion just waiting to explode. Janelle, who had been the voice of reason and calm for so long, finally broke. Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with the burden of all that she'd carried for so many years. Frustration, betrayal, hurt, it all spilled out. And this was no longer about Robyn's secret words. This was about years of being ignored, disrespected, treated as a background character in her own family. And Meri, with all she'd been through, from her tense relationship with Cody to the infamous catfishing controversy, she had finally hit her breaking point. She had endured for too long in silence, but now she wasn't merely standing up, she was speaking out. "You've been making everything about you, Robyn," she said. Her voice was calm, but laced with anger. And those words, they hit hard, years of pain, wrapped in a single sentence. Robyn, of course, tried to defend herself. She went back to her old game plan, victims, saying she never intended to harm anyone, that she didn't mean to hurt anyone. But you could feel it, the constraint in her speech, the eye aversion. The walls were coming in on her. She wasn't the one controlling the narrative anymore. And then Robyn said the one sentence that flipped everything. "I don't know how to share Cody." Boom. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for years, now voiced out loud. It stung like a gut punch. Not only for the wives, but for every viewer who'd watched this drama play out season upon season. For years, we'd seen Robyn hold on to Cody, emotionally, physically, even spiritually, while insisting she supported the idea of plural marriage. But now, she was admitting it. She couldn't share him. And in that one sentence, all the emotional manipulation came into the light. And what made the moment even harder to watch? Cody. He was there, but he said nothing. As Janelle and Meri bared their hurt, demanding accountability, pleading for the respect denied them all these years, Cody simply stood there, silent. His inability to speak out wasn't just frustrating. It was a betrayal. A plain, unmistakable indication that he'd made his choice a long time ago. And it wasn't with Janelle and Meri. That one moment of doing nothing, it plunged the wound deeper. Because these women weren't just bickering. They were fighting for respect, for truth, for their position in a family that had made them feel invisible. But Cody, he just stood there, frozen, seized by his fear of conflict, too afraid, or perhaps incapable, of confronting the brutal reality. He couldn't force himself to stand up to Robyn, and he sure as heck couldn't acknowledge the harm his silence had done. The weight of it all was emotionally irrefutable. As Robyn frantically defended her behavior, the reality loomed in the air. Cody's refusal to address the unhealthy dynamics, his failure to stand up for all of his wives, was what had enabled things to get this out of hand. This was not a passionate family argument. This was an emotional outburst, raw, hurtful, and intimate. For Janelle and Meri, it was the last straw, the moment they could no longer pretend, the point at which denial yielded to understanding. But this face-off was more than a theatrical moment. It was a power shift. Janelle and Meri were finished being the quiet ones, the understanding, supportive, always patient wives. No more walking around Robyn's manipulation. No more waiting for Cody to wake up. They were taking back their voices and their independence. This wasn't about preserving a delicate sense of family harmony. It was about self-respect, dignity, and about finally saying enough. As the tears dropped from Robyn and Cody stood there in silence, his silence more deafening than any excuse, the family dynamic shifted. For years, Janelle and Meri hadn't talked long enough to hold the family together. They were now pushing back, defying the very system that had kept them emotionally contained for so long. And while it was difficult to watch, there was something incredibly potent in that moment too. A stillness, a quiet strength, a realization. They were finished being controlled, finished being silenced. Things would never be the way they had been. The wall had fallen, the truth had been uttered, the breaking point had finally been reached. After that explosive fight with Robyn, the fallout was only a matter of time. Emotional damage doesn't take a day to disappear. The wounds ran deep, but amazingly enough, in the midst of the pain, something new started to form. For Janelle, that was the breaking point. It wasn't about Robyn anymore. It was about regaining her life. She had spent so long quietly giving up, trying to fulfill Cody's wishes, trying to hold together a shattered family. But now, she was through playing that game. Her path to self-reliance did not occur suddenly. It was not a sudden, overnight transformation. But steadily, gradually, Janelle started finding herself again. She began asking herself what she needed, what she wanted. For the first time in a long time, she ceased seeking Cody's validation, stopped going out of her way for a man who had demonstrated, time and again, that her emotional health wasn't his concern. And to see that change, it was gorgeous. Janelle started making new friends. She put her own happiness first. And most importantly, she began living life on her terms, not Cody's. It became an authentic journey of self-discovery and empowerment for Janelle. She started to believe in herself again, her instincts, her inner strength. And by doing that, she came to realize something incredible. She didn't need Cody. She didn't need Robyn. She didn't need anyone to show her she belonged in the world. She was enough, just as she was. And that awareness, it was like finally being able to breathe after years of being emotionally smothered. At the same time, Robyn's story was unfolding in a completely different way. Whereas Janelle, and eventually the rest of them, started to heal, Robyn became stuck, spinning in circles in a cycle of regret and loneliness. The secret was out, and she couldn't erase what was done no matter how many times she tried. She couldn't rebuild the family. Her emotional manipulation, her controlling ways, everything had finally come back to haunt her. And now, she was confronted with a painful truth. She had ostracized herself from the very women who had once taken her in. The wedge she had pushed between the family, it was in too deep. And ironically, the more she tried to make amends, the further away she got. Her tears, her apologies, her desperation, none of it mattered. You could read it on her face. She longed for forgiveness. She longed for understanding. But the harm had been done. While the others recovered, Robyn was stuck alone with her what-ifs. And no matter how tightly she clung to Cody, it was becoming painfully evident. Things were never going to return to the way they were. But here's what impresses me the most in this whole story: the resilience. Janelle and Meri, in particular, didn't remain mired in the pain. They didn't indulge in the dysfunction. They opted to transcend it. They became the authors of their own narratives, their own destinies. There's something immensely potent about that. They found the courage to persevere, even when the ground had entirely moved out from under them. They opted for healing. They opted for dignity. And finally, after a long time, they opted for themselves. This family will never remain the same in the end. That showdown with Robyn, it wasn't merely for show. It was the demise of a poisonous cycle that had been secretly brewing for years. And yes, there are scars, emotional ones. But the women have discovered something even more precious: the courage to live life on their own terms, to be released from the vice of emotional control, to speak their truth loudly and clearly. This wasn't just one fight in a living room. This was about the power of truth, the courage to stand up, to reclaim your dignity, to stop letting someone else dictate your worth, no matter how close they may be. Will the family ever be whole again? Probably not. But for the wives, this was the moment they truly began to live for themselves. And that's a story worth telling. And as we look back at all that these women have endured, one thing becomes painfully obvious. The truth is an incredibly powerful thing. It destroys illusions, it reveals secret motives, and it makes us face things we've been trying to ignore for much too long. In this situation, the moment of truth was not only a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. By holding their ground, by not buying the manipulation, Janelle and Meri reclaimed their power. Self-respect wasn't something they could wait any longer for. They claimed it. This was a turning point, not only for the wives, but for the entire narrative of Sister Wives. The show has always been about the nuance of polygamy. But this chapter, it showed something more, something authentic, something raw. It revealed the humanity of it all. Heartbreak, learning, and struggle to escape emotional shackles. It was a tale not merely of a family disintegrating, but of women finding strength to stand tall and live unfettered. I want to hear from you now. Who do you believe was betrayed most in all of this? Janelle, who saw everything she held dear come crashing down around her? Meri, who's been on an emotional roller coaster for years? And Robyn, do you believe there's any possibility of reconciliation? Or is it just too late? Leave your opinions in the comments. I really want to hear what you think of this jaw-dropping moment. And don't forget to subscribe to TLC Reality Talk for more in-depths like this. Because this tale, it's not even close to finished. Stay tuned. More is coming.